All right, so you see this this lovely face right here. This is a video that Asmongold made on his alternate channel that he does when he's not, you know, doing Asmongold type things. And we're gonna see what he thinks about Final Fantasy XIV. Obviously, I've been watching a lot of his streams. I've been tuning into him live. I actually tuned into him live tonight, today actually, and I've been watching him all throughout the week whenever I can. So I've witnessed his reactions to a lot of A Realm Reborn stuff firsthand, but I would love to hear what he has to say when he's not playing the game, when he's not on camera, when he's not trying to be on as Asmongold all the time. So I thought this would be a fun video to watch to see what he really thinks about it. You know, just him being, you know, his relaxed, chill self. So let's tune into that.
What's up, boys? Today I want to talk to y'all about my first impressions about Final Fantasy XIV. I just got done playing the game for about, I'm really not sure about how many hours. I think I played it total about 30, 40 hours, maybe a little bit less, a little bit more. And I'm like level 43, almost done with The Realm Reborn. And I wanted to give those real, actual, legitimate first impressions of the game. What I thought
this is why I wanted to watch it.
Bad, and everything else in between. Now, overall, I want to say that the experience of playing the game and, like, the meta around it, not just the game, but, like, me streaming the game, people talking about me playing the game, that shit has blown me away. Holy shit, you guys love this. Like, I didn't expect to get, like, over 200,000 viewers playing the game on my first day. That was incredible. Thank you. If you
that was,
that stream,
I was there.
I was there. People have come back. They've come back every day to watch. I really do appreciate that, too. That
he's consistently hitting over 100K views.
Right? Because for the longest time,
I just crazy.
Wow, I just played WoW. And now I'm playing Final Fantasy as well. And then, oh shit, now New World's coming out. And then, oh wait a minute, Ashes of Creation Alpha is coming out before that. And it's like, oh my god. You know, when it rains, it pours. That's basically the way that I feel. So, it's a good thing, by the way. A rainy day keeps the shower away. So anyway, I want to kind of talk a little bit about the positives and negatives about the game. I think that the worst thing about Final Fantasy XIV,
I know what he's gonna say,
is buying the game.
Yep, buying the game. He's said that multiple times.
I think that is the genuine worst thing about it. Using their website and trying to figure out oh, well, you have a Square Enix account, but you don't have a Final Fantasy account. Oh, well, you have to buy this, but if you buy it on Steam, then it's different.
Right.
Like, what the fuck? Like, just make it simple. It's like Blizzard, okay? Like, one thing that they do right is they make it easy to give them money, okay? And I would love if Square Enix could at least get their shit together a little bit with that, because I'll be honest, it took me 2 or 3 hours to try to figure out how all to do all that stuff. I had to buy one of the games twice. It was really annoying, and just overall, it's confusing, it's contrived, and it's hard to understand, I think, for many people. And I think that also, especially with so many people coming into the game now because of the state of WoW, and just in general, people talking about it, and Endwalker coming out in November, there's going to be a lot of people excited to play the game, and what an awful barrier to entry if giving them money is hard to do.
Okay, so he is absolutely right. He is 100% right about this. When I can't tell you how, I didn't stress over it too much, but when I switched from PS4 to PC, I was concerned about whether I should buy the game through their website or through Steam. And I'd heard a couple of things about Steam. I wasn't too keen on using Steam because I'd heard it was kind of difficult, kind of contrived. So I didn't really want to use Steam because I had heard not so great things about getting the game over there. But when you use the website, then it's like, well, I had already had a Square Enix account. Obviously, I was playing on PS4. But just for new people getting into it, it can be extremely confusing, especially when it comes to PC users. I would say on console, it's not all that convoluted. It's pretty straightforward, but you still actually on PC, well, no matter where you play the game, you have to have a Square Enix account, so you have to register there, and then you have to basically make sure that you will have another account to get into the MOG station. So to actually activate your account, you'll need to have I think you have to have a separate account for MOG Station. I don't know if the two accounts are connected, but this is what I mean. Like, I forget if the MOG Station account is connected to your Square Enix account, because I'm basically using the same name in the same place. So, like, just kind of trying to kind of make it less convoluted for me. But Yeah, Zach is absolutely right. He's 100% on the mark with that. It's very very difficult to buy the game in a way that doesn't stress you out. I totally feel for him that he had to buy the game twice. And I was actually like, I'm sure a lot of people have actually like made videos on this. I have to see if how many people have actually like broken this down, this process of how to purchase the game. But I've been kind of kicking around the idea of making a video of like how do you actually go about purchasing the game in a way that doesn't have you to lose money unnecessarily. And I will also say that I have a feeling that the way Japanese websites are designed in general are still very much kind of like early 2000s style. So they may be creating products like various games that we like to play, and they may be upgrading them for modern day. But when it comes to website design, they really keep it. They don't change that all that a lot, and it's very very weird. The way things are, the way the Mog Station even looks, the way that's designed. They like to reuse assets and reuse ideas that they've already done for other sites because they know that they work. The Japanese are very, very rigid on not changing things that already work. So that's why we're kind of, it's very convoluted because, you know, that's just how the company decided to make their website and build that out and connect all the wires, whatever wires need to be actually connected. But yeah, it's definitely a headache. I actually got pretty stressed out when I pre-ordered Endwalker. For a couple of days I was like, did I pre-order this correctly? Like, did I get the right one? Because it was like you had to pre-order and then they confirmed with you and then you had to wait for like another, like for them to actually check to make sure that your credit card was okay, and then they sent you like another notification, and then like somewhere like after that period of time you actually had to like respond. You had to like they gave you a code for like the in-game items, and I completely missed that email. One of my friends who streams, Duskitos, he's come to my stream a couple of times. He mentioned that he had the Menfina ring or Menfina earring already for leveling, and I'm like, why does he have it and I don't have that yet? So I had to look into my email, and lo and behold, like in the midst of all of those emails they were sending to me for confirming the pre-order, they sent me an email with the code to actually confirm that it's an official digital copy that I'm getting, because I ordered the collector's edition, so I'll be getting some really cool stuff. I'll show that on stream when I get it. But yeah, I completely missed the code to get the in-game items, but that got solved. But that was literally like a week and a half after they'd already confirmed that and sent that email to me. So it is very convoluted. Zach is completely right, and I feel for him.
So I really think they need to redo their payment system and the way that works, and just make it easier for people to understand. But other than that, there aren't really a whole lot of like really big negatives. I remember the 2.5 second GCD. This is something that I was kind of I was very skeptical that this would be a problem, because I assumed that whenever you have a GCD that's quite long like that, there are always going to be abilities like interrupts, like stuns, etc., that have to be split-second abilities that you would use in between that. So it's not really like a 2.5 second GCD. It's like every 2.5 seconds you use a main ability, and then you can use filler abilities.
You can use like an
cooldown,
off-global
which
cooldown.
is effectively the way the game works.
An off-global cooldown.
I think that the combat seems fine. The lack of add-ons is definitely odd for me as a WoW player. It's harder for me to get used to that, because as a WoW player, the first thing you do if you're playing a game, it's like, oh, well, I can't play this on your computer because it doesn't have my 15 different add-ons with my 50 different settings and my 30 different weak auras and my 8 different, like calibrations here. Like, it's very, very complicated. And with Final Fantasy, you're just using the base default UI, and of course there are a few things you can get that are more advanced, that are apparently add-ons, etc. But I haven't really wasted my time doing that because I just don't really find it necessary. Well, anyway, I want to go through each of the different, tenets of the game and talk about what my first impressions of them were. Now, the first thing is the story, and I think the story is actually very interesting in the way that it's told, because I was thinking a lot about this, and what is the difference, and why is it that Final Fantasy, it's easier to tell a story in Final Fantasy, and why does it do that? Because people told me that A Realm Reborn was going to suck, and I'm like, if the questing sucks, there's no way it can be worse than Classic WoW. And I was right. It wasn't that bad. It was completely fine. And I read a few threads about this, and people are talking about, oh man, he's never going to be able to do this 3 quests that are super boring. It's like, what are you talking about? Like, I've done that for weeks on like 10 levels before in Class 12. It's been no big deal for me personally.
Good. I'm really glad to hear that.
As an older player, but I can definitely see where the monotony would absolutely set in. But anyway, why is it that the the quests in the story in Final Fantasy, why is it that those things are told in such a more easily digestible format than what they do in WoW? And I think the difference is very simple. It's the difference between a tweet and a twit longer. And WoW tells their story in twit longers, and Final Fantasy tells their stories in tweets. Basically, what I mean by that is that whenever you are listening to the Final Fantasy dialogue, it is giving you information in about this much of a little box, right? Meanwhile, whenever you do WoW, it's this much.
It's a wall of text.
And you read the first 2 lines, and you're like, okay, what's the objective? But in Final Fantasy, because many times the information is very short, and it's presented to you in very bite-sized formats, it makes it easier to digest for the user, and I think that it also makes it easier for people to understand the story, because it's being given to them in these very specific increments.
That's actually a really good point. I never thought of the story in that context. That's a very interesting way to perceive it. I suppose after playing a game for so long that just gives you straight walls of text, and I've watched a couple of streams where Asmund has played World of Warcraft, so I again, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to recognize that when you get quests, it's basically this whole like dialogue thing, and you have to, there's just details. It's basically like lore. They give you a lore dump immediately in that post, and that's the only thing that you get. You get that one thing, and then you go on your merry way, and most people don't even bother reading it. They just kind of look on their map, find where they need to go next, and that's what they do. But yeah, it's a really good observation on his part, because obviously I wouldn't be able to make that observation because I haven't played WoW personally, or played a game in which you receive a straight wall of text like that. But yeah, I would agree. Yeah, the game presents you the story in very easily digestible bits of text, and it makes it very easy to kind of follow the story, to get connected with the main NPCs of the story, and that formula has basically worked. It's very Final Fantasy overall. So just maintaining that sort of that's the way they've told stories throughout their games, throughout their other RPGs. It's just the conversations are very much in their rectangular bubble, and then you move on from there once you have the information that you need. So yeah, really great observation.
And I think also creating the dialogues between the different characters, and
there's interactions between the NPCs and everything.
A better way to personify who those characters are, and give a better idea of
it makes you want to read
who feels what way.
Yeah.
So I do think it really matters to do that, and in Final Fantasy, I really do feel that they've done a very good job with that. Now, another element with this, so storytelling overall, I think is great. I like the storytelling, and one of the things about the storytelling that I think is very interesting, and this is something that probably one of the main reasons why I wanted to make this video is to share this idea that I've had, is that I believe that storytelling is actually one of the reasons why Final Fantasy doesn't have as much of a, quote, toxic community as World of Warcraft. And I don't necessarily think this is maybe entirely true in all ways, but I want to draw a distinction between the way that Final Fantasy deals with antagonists versus the way that World of Warcraft deals with antagonists. Almost every single time in Final Fantasy, especially in the early quests, that you have an antagonist, there is a point where the antagonist comes to a realization that they have done something wrong, and then after that there is generally a point of mercy where people think, oh well, he gets it, he understands, we're going to give him a second chance. So in so many cases in Final Fantasy, there is a element of forgiveness, there is an element of redemption, whereas in World of Warcraft, there is an element of retribution and execution, much more often than there is.
You fuck up, you die.
I think that just telling a narrative in a way that you create the idea that people are, redeemable, and you have somebody does something really bad, everybody's really mad at them, and they're given forgiveness. I think that in a very, very subtle way sets the tone for interactions in the game. And I think in a way, that does kind of create a paradigm in which to interact with each other in the game. And I think that having that narrative where players are not just instantly executed for doing something wrong, or most quest lines do not end in the person that's causing the trouble being put in jail or destroyed or killed or something like that. I think the end result of that is a more understanding player base, because they've been conditioned to feel that way through the narratives in the game. And I find it very interesting that that's the case. And I've seen that more and more and more, because whenever I was first questing, it's like, oh, well, this guy's doing some stupid shit. Man, all right, I can't wait to kill him at the end of it. And at the end of it, they just give him a pat on the back and they say, listen, man, we knew you were misunderstood. Hopefully you can get your shit back together. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I thought we were going to take him to the back of the barn and shoot him.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even happen. And I think it's a very subtle, and it's a very removed way of thinking about things, especially whenever you're taking narrative decisions in the story and comparing them to player behavior. But I do think that it does rub off in a very specific way, especially with how important many of the players in Final Fantasy view the story. So,
okay, so I agree with what he says. I do agree with him there. It's a very keen observation as it relates to the overall psychology of our community for Final Fantasy XIV. Obviously, there are people who are pretty shitty, but it's always surprising. Like, for let me give you an example. I watched Asmongold play. He was doing Castrum. What was it? Castrum Marianus? No, that's not it. That's a different one. He was doing the first Castrum that I can't freaking remember the name of right now. So it was the first Castrum in A Realm Reborn, and in that area, basically what you do is... No, sorry, he was doing Praetorium. He was doing Praetorium. I did watch him do both, but when he was doing Praetorium, there's basically, as soon as you get into Praetorium, the typical attitude of Praetorium is, I'm here for my gear. Well, no, I'm not here for my gear. I'm here to just get through this. I'm going to get my rewards, and I'm gone. We're going to finish this as quickly as possible. When he was doing it, he didn't know anything about Praetorium or anything about the culture or how Praetorium is usually run. So when he got into Praetorium, he was obviously a tank, and he went ahead and aggroed all the enemies and then stuck around. Like in the first area of Praetorium, he just stuck around. And anyone who's played Final Fantasy XIV for any period of time, for any period of time, I guess over like a couple of months, and you've got into doing roulettes and stuff, you know that the typical attitude of Praetorium is you don't aggro anything. You aggro things just enough to like distract them, and then you get the fuck out of there, and we keep going. You all keep going as a group. We all know this. Except when he did it, people actually stuck around. They didn't just leave him behind. They stuck around to help him. And to me, that was surprising. And I've been surprised multiple times by the actions of those in the community. As much as I felt great disdain and embarrassment for those who were deliberately using their large mounts to obscure his ability to do quest lines on day one. On day one, this was a really big issue where people were being exceedingly obnoxious. People who have played the game for a very long time and don't have those mounts. You can't get those mounts very easily. And these people were deliberately like covering his character, covering areas in the field when he was first leveling, and that just made it easier for stream snipers to kill mobs out in the field. So he was basically scrambling, trying to kill things to finish his quest. Meanwhile, we have people who've actually been playing the game for a long period of time, highly disrespecting him and embarrassing those of us who would never do such a thing to a new player. Because at the end of the day, Asmongold is a new player. He's trying to experience the game, and some people took it upon themselves to truly disregard that and to be obnoxious as hell. So with regards to what Asmon said just now, basically putting the story or aligning the story with the idea of forgiveness and, forgiving people and giving them another chance. There are definitely aspects of that in the community, but and it's actually very predominantly that people are largely very kind, very understanding, and I think that's great. I think that's wonderful that we have so many people who are so kind and loving, who are like helping him through his dungeons, who knew who he was and were just there to help him, and were very just kind of patient with him as he was figuring things out. And I love to see that. That's the kind of stuff I really, really love to see. And I can't disagree with his perspective on how the story can potentially influence how the overall community conducts themselves, for the most part. What I would be curious about is if that mindset remains, if he continues to have that mindset as he gets further into the story and people start to die. And again, anyone who's played 14 quite a bit knows that though in the beginning and like the early stages of the game, it's very kind of like, we're just kind of doing this political dance between these three city-states or whatever. Like we all know that, but as things progress, things get intense, people end up dying, and there really are. The game doesn't hesitate to kill off people that you don't expect to get killed off. So I'm sure he'll still hold the same idea, but I wonder if his perspective on it, on WoW just laying down retribution and execution on people, I wonder if he's going to kind of change his thoughts around about that once he sees how the story actually evolves later on.
Let's go ahead and talk about combat. I actually think combat it's about the same, really. I think WoW has great combat. That's really the truth. I think that it's got really, really well-designed combat. It's extremely responsive. When you hit a button, it does something, and there's no delay at all about it. And I think that
it's a 1.5
Blizzard
cooldown.
Dislikers, let's just say, not haters, just dislikers. Some of the most staunch Blizzard dislikers they're going to have to admit that, like, Blizzard and World of Warcraft is an extremely responsive game, unless you have more than 5 players in an area. But other than that, if you're just playing with a few other people, it is extremely responsive. When you hit a button, your character does something immediately. And I think that is one element of Blizzard quality that has actually stood the test of time.
Okay, I don't have first-hand experience playing WoW, but I do think that his perspective on responsiveness comes from WoW having a shorter cooldown time. I believe it's 1.3 or 1.5 or something to that effect, like 1.5 seconds. Meanwhile, Final Fantasy has like a 2.5 cooldown on each of their abilities. So I'm not sure if that perspective that he has on responsiveness specifically, I'm not sure if I completely agree with that. It's easy for a game to feel responsive when you have such a short cooldown, and basically, like, the time it takes for you to think of what you want to do next in your rotation is just enough time for you to hit the button and for it to respond every time. In 14, it's a little bit different because it's a longer GCD cooldown. It's 2.5, and obviously you're going to have some lag on responsiveness when it comes to that. But as he mentioned earlier, as I'll mention now, you have off-global cooldowns that you'll be able to weave into that span of whatever your global cooldown is, because your global cooldown can change. For those of you who are not familiar, you don't just stay at a 2.5 cooldown the entire game. You actually do have the ability to lessen that number depending on the kind of class that you're playing and the style that you want to play in. That's really where materia comes into place. That's why, pentamelding, that's where you hear terms like pentamelding and stuff like that. There are ways to lessen that span of time for your responsiveness, and I also think that we have to also consider the tunes, as the WoW community calls them. They're much smaller, so the animations are much smaller. Like the time it takes to do the animation is it's very, very short, because the size of your character on the screen is very, very small. Meanwhile, we have full 3D characters on the screen doing full-on, vibrant, flashy animations. So it actually makes sense to have a 2.5 cooldown to have enough time for those flashy animations. And I think, you have to take those things into consideration when you're, considering the responsiveness of the two games as a whole. So that's really my take on that.
So Final Fantasy, I think, is close to that. It definitely is. But especially with off GCD abilities like interrupts and stuns, I don't think that they have the same responsiveness that World of Warcraft does. But that could also just be me not really understanding it quite as well. I think I'll probably have to give you guys an update on that once I hit level 80. Now, in terms of
I think you'll
goals
feel
in the
different
game,
about it at level
my
80.
goals in Final Fantasy.
There will be a
I think
lot
that
more to
some
do.
people before I started playing the game did not believe this, but my goals in Final Fantasy are to clear ultimate fights. I'm not planning on hitting level 80 and then quitting the game. And I think more and more, the more that I know life, the worst parts of the questing experience, and still somehow manage to enjoy them, the more that some of my more fervent detractors will have to come to the realization that that might actually happen. So I'm very
Which
excited.
pleases
about
me.
it. Honestly, I've been watching some of the fights just on different people's channels, etc. And I am so excited to do the raids. I think they're so
He's
cool.
probably been
And
watching
it's-
Zepla.
The thing is, with
Probably.
me and WoW is like I
know
used to
she's
really love the
progging,
raid. And
the
the
Epic
worst
of
part
Alexander
about
right
raiding
now.
for me is the other people, right? Like I love doing the fights, but whenever I've got Billy the dipshit who just keeps standing in the fire, and I'm spending 3 hours of my day, 3 days a week, waiting on Billy to figure out the fire's hot, I'm not necessarily having a good time. So that's been a big problem that I've had with WoW raiding. And Final Fantasy, you have less people in Ultimates. I think it's 8 people instead of 20 in Mythics. So hopefully we can be a little bit more specific in who we're going to invite in and who we're going to let in. And I really am actually looking forward to progressing through the Mythic system, or not Mythic, the Ultimate and Savage and I think Extreme systems for some of the older fights in Final Fantasy. Like, this is something that I'm genuinely excited about and genuinely looking forward to. And it's not even really about the armor. Like, the armor is cool, and don't get me wrong. Like, we're definitely going to be talking about
I'm
the
glad,
armor
like,
a little bit here.
he likes
But
the
it's mostly just
full
about being able to
3D
do fights.
aspect
I feel like
of the
many
game.
the fights
He
in
really
Final
likes that.
Fantasy have not really challenged me, I feel like, as a player. And so I'm really waiting to get to that point where I'm like, fuck, okay, this is actually hard. And I'm not, the greatest player ever, so I think that it will probably happen at a certain point, probably soon. Other than that, I think mounts are definitely very interesting in Final Fantasy, considering the fact that all of them can fly, and it's not just the ones with wings. There is literally an elephant that flies.
Yes.
So it is a little bit silly to me. I'm going to be honest with you, it is a little bit silly to me, but it's one of those things you don't really think about a whole lot. I don't really give a shit that much. It was something that I thought would be more annoying than it was, and the reason why I think it's not that annoying is Final Fantasy is like, it's basically the highest form of fantasy fiction that there is. So you have like these giant airships, these giant monsters with metallic metal swords that are coming out, and they're like katanas, and there's fire coming off of them. And then you see an elephant flying around, and it's like, yeah, of course the elephant's flying. It's not that big of a deal.
Of course,
so
there's a
in
flying
the scope
car.
Of Final Fantasy,
A 4-seater
elephants
flying car, of
literally
course.
Flying, pigs flying is actually not that crazy at all. So I'm really worried about that too much. Then in terms of the community has been, you guys know, my community experiences in Final Fantasy have been very colorful, and
Yes, they have.
there has been a lot of people that have been a little bit annoying, but shout out to Square Enix. They've actually done a good job at trying to at least try to give me as much of a normal experience as possible. There were a number of people trying to grief me and just stream snipe me and just generally be annoying as possible.
Especially on day one.
And cover
Somewhat
up
on
as
day
much screen
two.
as possible, so I couldn't see anything. And
Largely
they
on
did
day
do a
one,
good
though.
job. The GMs did a great job at kind of taking care of those people and putting them in timeout, which is something that I was very, very glad about, and something that, in my opinion, should happen in all games.
Agreed.
And
100%.
either way, community has been, I think, completely fine. I think Final Fantasy definitely it's hit the mark of being that place that you can log in and hang out in. And I think that's one thing that a lot of the more casual MMORPG players definitely feel at home with, because they can log in, hang out with their friends, maybe do a quest, maybe do a dungeon or something like that, and there's not as much of high stakes with it. And I think that high stakes is another element. This is probably the last thing that I want to talk about with the Final Fantasy.
Okay, I do want to make a quick comment on his mention of the community and how people can just hang out and AFK and just kind of be there in the community and just have it just going in the background as whatever they're doing, whatever in their lives. I do enjoy that a lot. I think I would say a large swath of people enjoy 14 largely because it feels like the kind of game that you can bring your friends into, and you can have just a nice face-to-face experience with them while you are just AFKing in a city. And there's also it feels like you're in an actual kind of city setting. So because the game is fully 3D, well, I shouldn't say 3D, it's three-dimensional. Well, that's 3D. Because we're using 3D models in the game, basically you're able to just kind of have like a face-to-face experience with someone. You can meet someone new, you can you know, comment on someone's glam, and there's so many opportunities to kind of like just interact with people behind a character avatar that normally wouldn't be available to a lot of people. And I think 14 for many people is kind of that ability that it provides them with an outlet to be social, when, you know, the real world for a lot of people can be very scary, can be very intimidating, and you don't really know like how people are going to accept you. But when you're in 14, you know that if you're playing 14, if you're in the same game, then there are some commonalities that you share with each other, and I think that's a really wonderful thing, that you're able to just, you know, hang out, be social, AFK, put your character in an emote dance, and, you know, just really kind of make the game feel more alive and more social and just more fun overall. Because I would say like way more than half of the community is casual. I would say about like I don't know, but I would say more than 50% of the community are just casual, kind of every day. They're gonna do their roulettes, they're gonna do like the occasional dungeon or whatever, and that's really it. They're gonna go get their tomes, they're gonna turn them in for better gear, they may do some crafting, and that's really it. That's largely how the community is, and that's why we have so much content that caters to those people. There's, you know, people like me. We're like very we're like the tippy top when it comes to like the people who are doing like hardcore content. So you know, I like the casual people too. I like people who are just hanging out too. I don't have anything against them, but there's a distinct difference with how many people are just enjoying the game for what it is, and how many people are like just really looking for that next big challenge. And I'm kind of somewhere in between, as I just started doing Savage content, and I really like that Zack is looking to get into the raiding scene fairly soon, and I think that's great. And I think that because he's already on board with getting into that content. So because he's already there, I think that as he does each fight, each extreme that he does, I think he'll be that much more inclined and that much more knowledgeable when he gets around to getting to Savage content, and then, you know, ultimately Ultimate content. I think it will take him a long time. If he's going to take time to do those extreme contents, not all those extreme fights, it's going to take him some additional time, rather than just kind of speeding through the MSQ. It's going to take him, it basically is going to hold him back from getting to the true endgame, essentially. But if he gets into doing the raiding content as soon as I think he's going to do it, then I think he'll be well prepared for the actual endgame content, where, you know, he'll be doing Eden and going through those fights with Savage, and ultimately getting up to, you know, doing an ultimate. He might even like do the ultimate coil of the coil of Bahamut ultimate. He'll probably end up doing that first. That'll probably be his first extreme, most likely. That's what I think. But yeah, we'll just have to see what he does. But yeah, the community is super casual, largely, not entirely. But
fancy first impressions is high stakes is definitely it's a spectrum. And so let's talk about really high stakes. Let's talk about Classic WoW with full world buffs. If you wipe the raid in Classic WoW with full world buffs, people are fucking pissed. They're furious because they've spent hours preparing for this, and especially before the Chrono Boon Displacers, they had to log off all week to make sure that they didn't lose these buffs so they could do the raid the following Tuesday. And then finally they get to the raid and somebody fucks it up and they lose all of their work that they've been looking forward to for the entire week.
Wow.
So you have that much loss and you can lose that much, and you get massive toxicity. You have people that get really angry about that because
I can see
they
why.
lose so much through wiping.
Right.
And also, I think a little bit of a lesser extent here, let's talk about Mythic Plus. Why is Mythic Plus a little bit more toxic than, let's say, Dungeons in Final Fantasy? It's very simple. Because if you fuck up a dungeon in Final Fantasy, you just get somebody else in the group and it's not a big deal. But if you fuck up a Mythic Plus, you lose your key and it gets depleted. So the element of scarcity, the element of loss, is a little bit more prevalent in World of Warcraft, and because of that, that scarcity creates pressure, and that pressure creates toxicity.
Okay.
I think Final Fantasy
I didn't know that.
pressure off in a
Did
lot
not
of
know
those
that.
cases, and doesn't create those lose conditions that are so punishing for players that it makes them resent each other. And I think that is a very, very impactful thing. And I actually think that Blizzard should look at that and try to create more challenging boss fights, and rather than creating more punishing boss fights. I'd rather be challenged than punished. I guess that's kind of a good way to look at it, but of course there's a lot more to it as well. But anyway, my experience overall with the game has actually been very good. I've had fun with it. I've enjoyed it. My stream has enjoyed it, and it's a great feeling as a streamer. I'm sure you guys, you know, if you stream before, you'd know this, but even if you haven't, it's very easy to relate to this or understand this. That it's a great feeling that you get involved with a game and you really like playing a game, and it turns out that your stream really likes watching it. There's no weird thing where you're playing this game that you don't want to and you're doing it because of your stream. No. Or it's no thing where you're, you know, playing this game that you do want to and your stream's hating it and they're complaining about it. And I think it's great. I'm really happy about it. And I've also, like, one thing that's really been heartening for me and very positively uplifting is the fact that I've had a lot of people that are, you know, they're first-time Final Fantasy viewers, and they're willing to try out, you know, and give my WoW content a chance. You know, watch a transmog.
I've watched him.
You know, watch a new dungeon.
I watched his last Mount Off
try to enjoy
in
the
WoW.
content and appreciate
I think that was his
genre
first WoW
of
stream that I
MMOs
watched
for
of
what it
his
has
recently.
to be, rather than tribalism that I think has actually just made the it's made the entire space worse. It's made the community worse as a whole. And I think one of my main goals with all of this is to try to give people the perspective that you can love multiple games, you can have fun in multiple games, and you can appreciate multiple games. It doesn't necessarily have to be a zero-sum environment. And I really enjoyed playing this other game. It's been super fun for me. I'm super excited for Ashes of Creation. I'm even excited about other games like Talia and Crowfall too, and as well as like other RPGs too. I think that playing Final Fantasy has given me a lot of confidence with streaming, and I'm very glad that it's gone so well, and I look forward to doing other games similar to that as well in the future. So I want to say thank you guys, everybody who's been so supportive and everything. I've really enjoyed playing the game, and also I look forward to continuing playing as well. And so overall, it's been a pretty fun experience. It's been more fun than I had expected, and I've actually just enjoyed myself. It's really just that simple.
That's great.
So anyway, guys,
Love that.
That's pretty much all I've got. Thank you very much for watching. I'm curious to hear what your thoughts are on about it. I know a lot of people have talked to me about it already, but I wanted to make a video and just kind of share a little bit more of a expanded view of how I felt about the game. So anyway, guys, overall, TLDR, game good. Thank you all very much for watching. Really appreciate it. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Peace. All right. So yeah, that's I'm so glad. I'm so glad that he's enjoying the game. Like he had to be so resilient on day 1 and day 2, and I love that he's still just kind of, all of his past experiences have made him so resilient to just the criticism and stuff. And yeah, his stream has actually been enjoying it. Like his viewers have been enjoying it. I've been watching his chat, how they respond to a lot of things, and it's been relatively wholesome. There's still some people who try to troll him, a lot of people try to troll him, but largely it seems like his viewers really do enjoy what he's doing. I've become one of his viewers as of recently, so I love to hear it. So Vi says, the other day I was in a city and stopped to listen to a crowd. I clapped when she finished playing and then she bounced me. I don't have the kind of interaction. WoW was surprising and fun. Yeah, Vi. It's very much that kind of community. Like when bards play in the town, they're usually doing it because they want to add some ambiance. They want to add something new and something fresh for people to listen to. And sometimes people just gather around. Sometimes people hold concerts and people just gather around and listen to them play. And I think that's awesome. Like when you have a chance to connect with another player, because you know they've put work to the character and they're just kind of being casual. They're not doing anything serious. They're just trying to play a little bit of music to maybe hopefully brighten someone's day. And then someone actually acknowledges them and appreciates them. I think we all kind of seek that. We all really seek that that desire to be seen as someone who's contributing something that's useful, and that made someone smile in 14. And I think it may be, I don't know this for certain, but it may be more difficult to have those interactions in WoW because, I don't know, it's just kind of a different kind of atmosphere. And the culture in WoW is very different from 14. So, you know, I can't speak too much to WoW, so I'm not going to pretend that I can. But what I'll say about 14 is that, you know, there are a lot of people who genuinely enjoy just, you know, making people smile and just kind of chilling and having a good time and enjoying the game and the atmosphere for what it is. And, you know, not everyone's going to be doing Savage content, like I said before, but even still, I think it's awesome that, you know, you had that experience, and that now you can hold that experience with you. That you could have that interaction, you had that interaction, and now you know that when someone talks badly about the game, and you know how someone maybe had a bad experience in the game, you can always think back to that and say, well, yeah, I'm really sorry that you had that not so great experience, but there are so many more opportunities that there's so many more opportunities to have positive experiences if you're just open to it. And 14 does make it really, really easy to kind of have those really nice experiences like you had, Vi. So I'm really happy to hear that. So thanks for sharing. Really appreciate that.